I'm going to go over a simple assignment that helps demonstrate how to use different functions in a Python program. So we'll be calling all of our functions from the main function, and we're going to be using a very simple set of area programs. We'll write, for example, area of a right triangle, area of a square, and area of a circle. And yes, we could calculate all of these in a single function, but the purpose is to do them in different functions just to demonstrate how to use different functions. We're also going to take this opportunity to use a while loop and a for loop and generate some numbers. We're not going to do randomly generated numbers. We're just going to use numbers that are generated while we create the while loop. And so this will be a really simple little demonstration, but the idea again is to demonstrate the use of functions and passing variables through the functions arguments. Okay, so the first thing that I like to do is start to set up my code. I mean, a little bit of a skeleton code. On top, I find it best to go ahead and enter my name. I guess we just put my name. If this is a class, then the class. Whatever this is, it's a midterm or assignment, but just put the assignment name. And then I usually put the date, and those the single quotations done like that comment out the block of code. The next thing I'll do is I'll create my my main function, and I'll throw a return in there. And I usually do something like this. I'll say print test main. And what this is going to do is this is going to when I want to test to make sure I've done everything right, this is going to test that function. So the next thing that we need is we need to say name and then underscore twice, and oops, in our comparator, and we're going to set this equal to underscore main and main function. What this little piece of code on the bottom tells us, it tells the compiler where the entry point to this code is, and so the entry point is going to be the main function. It's necessary when you're going to be writing multiple functions, and all of the code is going to be accessed through functions rather than just writing it linearly down the screen. Okay, so now we have enough to test everything. So we'll be doing that. We want to remember a couple of things while we write our code in Python. In Python, after each one of these functions, we have to have the colon. So you see that here and also right here. And to know when something's in scope, it needs to be indented. So here, for example, the main function is in scope. It has for its scope print and return. So these are all indented, and that means they're in scope with the main. This is not in scope. This is in its own scope. And you can see that because it's flush with the left side here. So in Python, that's how we tell things are in scope, is whether it's indented with the function. Another thing that I want to point out is the def. That tells us that what's going to follow, main, is the name of a function. So it says this is going to define a function. It's going to define it main, and then we're going to have some things happen. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit F5, which is the shortcut key to run, and enter. And we can see right away that our test main was printed out. So we know that we set up our function correctly and it's being called correctly. So that's great. We want to run this test right off the bat just to make sure we haven't made any typos and everything is working before actually writing our code. I'm going to go ahead now and write some variables that I need for this program to work. I'm just doing AA here because that's going to stand for my area. I'm going to go ahead and set it to an empty string, and AI. I'm going to set that also to an empty string, and I usually start these with lowercase, so let's do that. And J is going to equal 1, and we do need an array, so I'm just going to go ahead and call it area. Oh, and in Python they're not arrays, they're lists, so let's just go ahead and call it a list, and set it equal to our brackets. Now this indicates that the variable area list is going to be a list. That's what those brackets mean right there. Okay, so now we're ready to start doing some work. And the first thing we want to do is we need to generate these different numbers that we're going to be using, and we're going to be passing them to different functions. So I'm going to go ahead and write our while loop right now. I'm going to use J for my numbers here, and this can be done with a for loop. It doesn't have to be a while loop, but just to fit the requirements of this project, we're going to go ahead and use a while loop. So I'm going to go ahead and type this up. What this means right here is I've typed up some more variables, t, s, and c, and they're going to be equal to a function that hasn't been written yet called area of a right triangle, area of a square, and area of a circle. What's on the inside here, what I'm passing it, these arguments are j and j plus 1. J is going to be, all it is going to be the number that's generated right off the bat. So we know what j is going to start with 1. So the first iteration is going to be 1, and then the next one is going to be 1 plus 1. If I need two variables, so for example, the area of a triangle, I need two variables off of each iteration. So the very first iteration, it's going to be 1 and 2. That's what's happening on iteration 1. Iteration 2 will be 2 and 3, and so forth until it hits 10 iterations. Okay, so obviously these functions aren't written yet. I'm going to be writing them, but oftentimes I like to write these first and then comment them out until I'm ready to use them. And so I know I'm going to be using them. I'll go ahead and write them, and then I'll write the function later. So the next thing I need is j to increment, and so we're going to use our shortcut j plus equal 1, which is the equivalent of j equal j plus 1. So basically it just means that j is going to increment by 1 every iteration. That's all that means right there. Okay, so something else we can do before we even build our functions is we can go ahead and set up our string that's going to collect all of our areas. And so I'm just going to go ahead and write this up real quick. Okay, so what happened here is we have AI, which I'm just using that for my area string, and what it's going to do is it's going to say right triangle, and it's going to concatenate it with t, whatever is calculated for the area of t up here, and it's going to create it as a string. It's going to parse it as a string, and then it's going to concatenate it with the word square, and then it's going to concatenate it with the value s, which is calculated right up in here for area of a square, and then concatenate with the word circle, and then concatenate that with the string for c parsed to string, which is calculated right here, area of a circle. So basically we're getting area of a triangle, area of a square, and area of a circle concatenated each time in this while loop right here. And so that's just kind of helpful for us as we run through this. And this is going to, right now this won't work because these variables are not marked, are not created yet, not initialized. So we're going to go ahead and comment this part out. And then we're going to go ahead and create our functions for everything else. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a little bit more work actually in this function before we create the other functions. So the other thing I want to do is we have area already set up. So let's go ahead and area list, and we're going to append, that's a reserved keyword, to this list. And so what that means is we're going to take this list and we're going to add this string to this list every iteration. So it's going to go through, do these calculations, it's going to concatenate into a string, and then it's going to send that string into the list. And so that's what's happening right there. And that's just to demonstrate how to put something into a list. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a little for loop just to do a demonstration of how to pull stuff out of a list. And so we're going to say for I in area list, and we're just going to create a new variable called s, and we're going to set that to 0. And AA, we're going to concatenate this again, and I'll explain all this here in a second. Okay, so what we did here is we are entering our string that was concatenated right here into the list, and then we're going to pull it out of the list. We're going to say, okay, for every I in area list, or for every entry in list, we're going to concatenate this and pull it right back out. And so that's what's going to happen there. I don't think we need this piece right here. I'm not sure I did that. We'll comment it out for now. Okay, so the other thing we're going to do is we're going to now go ahead and start writing our other functions. I won't have anything in them yet. I'm just going to go ahead and write them, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I wrote my 3 functions, and now they're just ready for the little bit of math that we need to do to make this stuff work. And so I usually will do this just to make sure that it's indented properly. Python is very particular about those indents because that's how it determines what's in scope and what's not in scope. Each one of these functions are not in scope with each other, but whatever's inside of them must be in scope with that function. So let's go ahead and write our little formula here. So for area, we're going to say have a right triangle, and the formula is going to be just A times B, and divide that by 2, and we're going to return A, of course. Okay, for area of a square, let's go ahead and make sure that's lined up. Okay, that's right. We're going to say A is equal to length, and we're going to use the double asterisk for this one because all what that's saying is it's L raised to the 2nd power. So length raised to the 2nd power will give us the area of a square. So it's just, length times width is really what that amounts to. We can say length raised to the 2nd power. All right, area of a circle. Let's go ahead and fix that real quick. And area of a circle is going to be A equal 3.14. Yes, we could use the math function and pull out pull out pi, but it's not part of the requirements for this assignment, so we'll just do this. And we're going to say we're going to raise that to the 2nd power for 2, and we have our area of a circle, and return A. So I think all that looks good. So now that we have these things done, I usually throw this part right here at the bottom, so we're going to cut that out, and we're going to send it to the bottom. There are different ways to do this. It doesn't matter if the main's on the top or the bottom. Different programmers will put it in different places. I like to put my main on top just because I'm used to programming in C# and C++, and I'm used to having my main right away. But there's no reason that you can't put it on the bottom. I know some programmers put them at the bottom. But I like my main on top because I'm going to call my main functions from the main, and then I like my functions in order coming afterwards. To me, it just makes logical sense, but I don't know if there's an exact right way to do it. This is just the way that I like to do it. Okay, so we have all of this is ready. Now we can uncomment some of this stuff now, because these functions are made. So let's go ahead and uncomment. And I don't think I need that S on the bottom thing, so let's go ahead and leave that out. All right. Okay, so I made some corrections, some fixes, and I'm going to go through those right now. The first thing I did was I put the for loop out of scope of the while loop. It needed to go an indent to the left because it's not related to the while loop. The while loop is populating, and then we want the for loop to pull the information out. So I brought it to the left to justify it with the while loop. So it's in its own scope, but still in scope with the main function. The other thing I did is I did some spacing here to just make my formatting a little bit better. And so what we have is we have these 4 functions that are all demonstrating how to pass values through a function. We can take this one out, actually. Let's get rid of this. That's something we should do. And I've already gone through, we're concatenating the string here. We're parsing the calculated values to strings. That's what the str stands for. We're appending those values to the area list. So we're populating the list here. And then over here, we're pulling the information right back out of the list so that we can print it. And again, this is just for demonstration purposes on how to populate a list and how to pull the information out of a list. Here's our different functions. And so now we have everything we need to run. So let's go ahead and run this. And so now we have our run, and you can see the triangle is calculated. So the areas for each one is calculated. And so what this means is in the first iteration, j is going to equal 1. So for example, area of a right triangle, we're passing it 1 and 1 plus 1, which is 2. So the arguments we're passing are 1 and 2 to the area of a right triangle. And then 1 and 2 get added as a and b, and the little math goes forward. The area is calculated and returned. So that's what happens here. Iteration 2, j is now going to, j is incremented right here. Therefore, j now becomes 2. And so this is now 2. And over here, we have 3. So area of the right triangle becomes 2 and 3. And then the area is here. And then so forth. And then the same thing happens for area of a square and area of a circle. So for example, 1, 2, 3, and so forth through each iteration, and then those areas are here. So that's the example of how to set this up. We have our main functions, we have a little while loop. The while loop is calling these other functions, and we are returning them. This is the way that I like to format my code, and also for commenting. So I hope that that it works out for you. Let me know if you have any questions, because this is pretty much the way I do it. Some people won't have the spacings. They'll just put everything together. There's nothing wrong with that. I prefer to do it in this manner because I'm used to programming in C# and C++, and I like my information to be very clear and easy to read. Okay, well that's it. I'll leave my code there for a moment, and that's it.